today I have my hands on the new Tamron 16 to 30mm f2.8 G2. I'm going to be taking a hands-on look at this lens. We're going to be doing a portrait photo shoot. I've got photo, video examples to look at, so let's get started. I want to start just here. I feel like it'll look cool if you lean sort of towards the fence. And we've got the bins as always. Ooh, that looks so cool. I love that. This lens is super wide as well. This 16 to 30mm G2 is a new full-frame wide-angle zoom lens from Tamron with a constant aperture of f2.8. It comes in both E-mount and Z-mount, and today I'm going to be using the E-mount version on the Sony a7 IV for our portrait photo shoot and on the a9 III for video. If you have your face kind of in the sun here, I think could be cool. That's so pretty. Let me get like a close-up here. Oh, I love that. Even though it has a slightly different focal length, this is the second generation lens to the original Tamron 17 to 28 f2.8. So this new lens is now a few millimeters wider on both the long and wide end. Throughout this video, I'm sharing 100% crops of the unedited images I'm taking so you can properly see all the details this lens produces, and afterwards I'll have my edited version, and I decided to go with my Bluebells preset pack, and if you want to see more or get it for yourself, I'll leave it linked in the description. Just kind of crouch facing that way could be cool. Oh, would your face reach that little patch of sun actually right next to you?
Like right here?
Maybe. Oh, yeah, a little bit. Oh wait, that looks so cool. Tamron are known for their high quality third-party lenses, and this 16 to 30 is no exception. In terms of performance, you can see in the picture-in-picture that it had absolutely no problems keeping focus directly on Hailey throughout the entire photo shoot. When I'm testing out lenses for reviews like this, I generally like to just let the lens and camera do all the work for me with autofocus so we can get a better idea of what it's capable of. So I'm using a wide focus area with human IAF turned on and no other input from me to focus. I had a really great in-focus ratio. The majority of my photos from this photo shoot had critical focus, which is always great to see. And then would you also mind sitting like on the floor here? Would that be okay? So I'm thinking if you sit like right in the middle facing out this way, you kind of sit like maybe with one leg out and one leg kind of crossed. Yeah, that's awesome. Now that you've seen a few images so far, let's talk about image quality. I do just want to mention that this is not a conventional portrait lens, although as you can see, we are still getting some pretty cool results with it either way. I always use any lens I'm reviewing as a portrait lens. Anyway, I'm really happy with the images this little 16 to 30 produces. It has nice contrasty tones, punchy colors, and I would say it has a neutral color cast. The images it produces are pretty sharp. I wouldn't say this is the sharpest lens I've used, but I think the results still look really good. There were a few times where the image was a bit soft and lacking detail in Hailey's face, which you might notice in a few of my example images. I did have to use a slightly above base ISO for this shoot since this lens is 2.8 and I am photographing a moving subject. I like to keep my shutter speed a bit on the faster side to avoid motion blur. I think this lens handles shooting at the widest end of 16mm very well too. The vignetting and distortion is on the minimum side considering just how wide it is. Do you want to bring maybe one elbow onto your knee could be cool. And then maybe with your other hand, if you just kind of rest it like in your lap. Yes, I love that. This 16 to 30 weighs 440 grams for Sony E-mount, and the Z-mount version is 10 grams heavier at 450 grams. This lens is incredibly small and lightweight. It feels really great on the a7 IV, and I can only imagine it would be an even greater fit to some of Sony's smaller camera bodies like the a7C line, or even cameras like the Nikon ZF or the Z5, 6, and 7 line would be a good matchup as well. If you stand like right here in front of these like leaves, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna get some full body shots at 16mm right here. You can just see everything. I can easily see this lens being a great option to travel with, to use as an everyday lens, and also to vlog with. Something I am super impressed about is that this lens features internal zoom. It also has a good center of gravity, so when you use it on a gimbal, you can easily zoom in and out and it stays balanced. I will have some examples of that for you to look at when we test this out for video in just a moment. This lens features a zoom ring and a focus ring. It has a customizable button, a USB-C port, and a 67mm filter thread. It has a minimum focus distance of 19 centimeters on the wide end and 30 centimeters on the long end. Let's take a closer look at the bokeh. This lens has 9 circular aperture blades, and while you wouldn't really think that a wide-angle zoom will produce bokeh, you might be surprised at the separation on the long end. I actually really like some of the portraits I captured with this lens, especially on the long end. I guess it is very close to my favorite focal length of 35 after all. The bokeh is nice and round throughout the focal range and looks like it has a little bit of texture when you zoom in. This lens has a pretty significant flare on the 16mm end, as you can see here. The rest of the focal range has a pretty standard zoom lens flare with some color and texture, but overall I would say it looks pretty subtle. I want to try one more. If you could maybe get into this a bit closer. Yeah, that's nice. Let's talk about comparisons, because there are quite a few lens options in this zoom range available for Sony E-mount. One in particular I want to mention is that this 16-30 sits right at a similar price range as the Sony G 16-25mm f2.8. And can we try one if you kind of have maybe your hands up? Play with yeah. The Sony G lens is slightly lighter than the Tamron, however, is missing that last 5mm, making it quite a short focal length overall. I have a review about this lens as well, which I'll leave a link down below for you if you want to watch. Yay! Oh yeah, you've got some sun behind you. And so many cars, because this is such a wide angle. Look, we're going to embrace it. Both of these lenses are a good option to look at if you're after a wide-angle zoom for Sony. With the Tamron, I think having the upper hand with that extra 5mm on the long end. On the other hand, if you're a Nikon user, there are slightly less options available for you, and in that scenario, I think Tamron really stands out as a good option. And then I'm gonna try, do you want to try crouching just here in that little patch of sun? Ooh, that looks so cool. I love that. This 16-30 also looks like it handles chromatic aberration really well. I was only able to see very small amounts in bright backlit shots like these. For these video tests, I'm using the 16-30 on the A9 III with all the same settings I normally do. So I'm using continuous autofocus, I have the AF transition speed set to 7, the fastest, and subject shift to sensitivity set to 5, responsive. This way we can see what this lens is capable of, and let me tell you, Dan and I tried to give it a hard time, but it had no problems keeping up with us. You can see how smooth and fast the autofocus is, even when we're running towards the camera. Actually, something I was particularly impressed with is that I've noticed lenses have a hard time keeping focus when you're in that close range moving back and forth like this, but this Tamron's focus in that area is really snappy. Look how well it keeps up. In terms of image quality for video, the footage is incredibly sharp and smooth. The background and bokeh look great as well. I could easily see myself using this as a high quality lens option for video, and you'll see in a moment when we get to the vlogging segment that this Tamron gives the Sony 16-35mm GM2, which is well over $1,000 more expensive, a good run for its money. We of course have to do a vlogging test on this lens. So right now I have the Tamron 16-30 on the Sony A9 III. That's what I'm vlogging on right now. I'm filming an S-Log and I have the camera on a gimbal as well. So when I'm doing a camera review, I don't use a gimbal because we want to see the IBIS of the camera. But when we're reviewing a lens, I use a gimbal so we can mostly focus on what the lens looks like. I'm filming this in S-Log and I'm using my own custom Rec 709 conversion LUT. I have the lens set to 16mm and this is what it looks like when I'm holding the gimbal just slightly away from my body. This is what it looks like with my arm fully outstretched, but I'm not strong enough to do that long term. And this is what I look like when I hold the gimbal with both hands. And I also want to do a little zooming test as well, because apparently the center of gravity of this lens is really good. So we're going to see if it stays balanced. So I'm going to hold it up against my body just so I've got a little bit more strength, but this is at 16 and I'm going to zoom into 30. And yeah, it stays perfectly balanced on the gimbal, which is great. So let's go back out to 16 and back into 30. The zoom ring is actually really smooth, so I feel like a little bit of practice, you could do that really smoothly. So this is what it looks like at 30mm with my arms kind of semi-outstretched. And this is what it looks like with my arm fully outstretched on the gimbal at 30mm. I've switched over lenses now, so I'm currently using the Sony 16 to 35mm f2.8 GM2 because I thought it would be interesting to compare the quality side by side since I do own this lens. So I'm gonna walk in the exact same spot. I'm using the same camera body, the same gimbal, and I'm filming at 16mm in S-Log on the 16 to 35. There are a couple of other lenses that I've logged on as well, I think, that I'll insert here if I've got the footage, just so you can see the quality difference of a couple of different lenses that are in a similar focal range as this Tamron. So some of these are filmed in different locations, but hopefully seeing them side by side or one after another will give you a good idea of the quality. That is all I have for today's review. Let me know what you think of the lens in the comments and which ones were your favorite photos. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I make new videos every single week, so I'll see you all next time. Bye.